Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. In November 2019, the government of British Columbia, under Premier John Horgan, unanimously passed the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, or DRIPA. DRIPA adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, as BC's framework for reconciliation. At the time, the province insisted that DRIPA did not create new rights and did not make UNDRIP directly enforceable law. Rather, DRIPA was described as a commitment to make decisions with Indigenous peoples rather than over them. To be clear, DRIPA does not change Indigenous constitutional rights. It has nothing to do with the Supreme Court of BC's recent Cowichan decision. DRIPA did not create, require, or regulate land acknowledgements. DRIPA has nothing to do with the Truth and Reconciliation Day, treaties or land agreements, compensation to residential school survivors, or funding to First Nations. However, a recent court case involving BC's online mineral claims staking system showed where DRIPA can matter in practice. The province had allowed mineral claims to be registered automatically with no consultation. Indigenous nations challenged that system. The BC Court of Appeal did not strike down mining laws or give Indigenous nations a veto, but confirmed that no consultation automated approval systems are legally risky. But more than that, the courts affirmed that DRIPA is a real statute that courts may consider when reviewing how the government makes decisions in real cases. So what if we just got rid of or repealed DRIPA? What would that accomplish? Here to explain, the interim leader of the Conservative Party of BC, who has written that Premier Eby needs to repeal DRIPA or resign, he's Trevor Halford. Trevor, hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mo. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Nice to see you. I got to ask, why should the province repeal DRIPA, and why should the province repeal DRIPA immediately?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that I've been talking about quite a bit. Listen, I've said everywhere, it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. And I believe that we're in a situation now where we need to fully repeal DRIPA. And we've seen in the recent court case regarding the Mineral Tenure Act, where this has been a problem. It's been interpreted by the courts. And now we're in a situation where we have, there's mass confusion. So I think for us is the Premier's acknowledged that this is a significant problem. But what he's acknowledged is that he's going to kind of give us a partial remedy here, and that's an amendment. I don't know what that amendment's going to be. I don't know how it's going to look, when he's going to do it. So for my thing is, let's go in there, let's do the work of the people, and let's repeal DRIPA, and let's bring some certainty back, because right now we don't have that. And I cannot explain enough how much this matters to not only our economy, but also to reconciliation in BC. I believe that this has kind of taken us a step back. And, when the Premier brought this in, he was the top law official. He was the Attorney General at the time. He stressed that we would never be in the situation that we are today. So again, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. So let's get on with it.
Ultimately, though, from my understanding, the court decision basically says that there is a duty to consult. And, is there a way where instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, this can be amended as the Premier has promised?
Then explain that. Right. And the Premier hasn't explained that. And I think if he could, I think he would, to be fair to him, but he hasn't done that. So, he said he's very concerned and, he's got everybody's backs, and that's great. But explain how you're going to do that. And without a proper explanation, my thing is this, is that, we need to repeal it, and we need to look at how we go forward. And that to me is the only remedy right now.
So just as a layperson, though, if we were to repeal DRIPA, what would this accomplish? Because I think some people may confuse it as a silver bullet, that it'll resolve all the land title issues or other issues that we're having on the reconciliation file. But in your understanding, what does repealing DRIPA actually do?
Well, I think the first and foremost thing it does, it takes it out of the court's hands, right? So when you're having something that the court is either, in some cases, people may believe are weaponizing or whatever it is, in using that inside the courtrooms for their decisions, the Premier said that they never intended this for this to be allowed in the courtroom. Here we're seeing that in real time now. So I think for us is we've got to take away that, and that's how we do it with a repeal.
Does everyone in your Conservative caucus agree with repealing DRIPA? And the only reason I ask this is because your predecessor, John Rustad, allowed for free votes, dissenting votes. So I'm just curious where your entire caucus sits with this.
For me, I believe that there's unanimous consent on this. We've discussed this as a caucus. We've had some great people. Alia Warbus, who a House leader, has spoken on it. She and I held a press conference at the legislature a number of weeks ago. So yeah, we have unanimous consent on that, and I think the public is looking that way as well right now.
All the MLAs in your caucus that were present for the DRIPA vote in 2019 voted in favor of it. Yep. So at some point, doesn't your party then also owe a mea culpa when even your predecessor, John Rustad, supported DRIPA?
Sure. And again, it goes back to the comment, like it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. And I think when DRIPA was introduced, I think that it was done in a way where people didn't anticipate we were having the problems we were going to have today, even though there were a couple of MLAs that did bring this up with the premier directly in what we call the committee stage of a bill, where you debate the merits of the bill. A couple of MLAs with very strong legal backgrounds, Michael Lee being one of them, Mike DeYoung being another, that did ask questions specifically on this, and the premier kind of brushed it aside, saying no.
John Horgan at the time, you mean? Or...
No, sorry, the Attorney General at the time, David Eby.
Okay,
good correction there. Was up there defending the merits there, and I think for us is that we're here now. And we're seeing the courts interpret this now, and we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what the next court case could be and how they can interpret DRIPA. So why would we allow ourselves to be that vulnerable when we have the power to go in the legislature and do what I think is the right thing and do the repeal of DRIPA?
Do you think this was a misread by the government at the time, including Attorney General David Eby at that time? Of course, he's premier now. Or do you think that they knew the risks, especially if you had people from the BC Liberals, bringing up some of these concerns?
Listen, I there's two answers to that. And I'll give you the one that I think is probably the most accurate, because, I'll never know and we'll never know. But the thing is that when you're government, you have, especially when you're in the Attorney General's office, you have hundreds of lawyers that are experts on every single issue, whether it be constitutional law, Indigenous law. It doesn't matter, that they are experts there. So you would think that when you're developing and when you're introducing this legislation, that you'd have full line of sight on all those things. I would expect that. Whether you agree with the legislation or not, you need to know what the risk and reward is. And I think that there was an absolute failure to do that. Because when you look at the Hansard clips and you look at what the premier, then Attorney General at the time, how he spoke and how confident he was on these particular piece of legislation, you would think there's no problem at all here. Right. We're all good, right?
Certainly the unanimous vote reflected that.
Yeah, but we're not. And that happens. And so for me is let's fix this. We all indicated, and why I know I have support in my caucus, we all said we're ready to go to work now. Like, we'll go to Victoria now and we'll get this done. We'll forego question periods. We'll forego private members' bills, 2-minute statements. We will just do this work. And I'm confident that we could have got that done very quickly. And he's chosen to take a different path, but he hasn't explained to British Columbians what that path is, because, to be honest, I don't think he knows.
And I think that's fair enough. I think British Columbians are certainly entitled to that. Now, on your party's website, it says that your party's position is to, quote, honor UNDRIP as it was intended. I'm confused what that means and how DRIPA doesn't actually do that.
Yeah, so a good question. I know that we campaigned on to repeal DRIPA when we did the election in 2024. I think that everyone's goals should be, and whether when I came from the private sector, it definitely was this when I was working in the resource sector, but you want to work with the First Nations that are involved, right? In good faith and good partnership, and they do as well. And that doesn't mean a veto, by the way, but it means that you're working in good faith and that you're trying to get consent. And I think that there's no problem in trying to achieve that. But when you add in this ambiguity, and I think that when other people, especially judges, can interpret it the way that they see fit, maybe the way that it wasn't intended to be totally fair, that's when you have a very serious problem. And that's where we are now, where, if you look at people that are businesses that are looking to invest in British Columbia, this is giving them massive pause, right? Because they're saying, well, hold on a second. Like when we make this investment, are the goalposts going to change in the middle of the game?
Right.
Right. And right now it's creating mass chaos out there, and the premier's he's got to own it, but he's also got to fix it.
So I can understand that urgency, or at least that argument for urgency to a certain degree. But then again, if your party is saying you want to honor UNDRIP as it was intended, again, why throw out the baby with the bathwater? Why not work on some sort of amendments to make DRIPA work in a way that, again, balances commercial or business interests as opposed to just repealing it right away?
Yeah. And I don't know what that is. Right. And unless that's clearly explained on what those amendments be and how that can fully inoculate us from the situations we're seeing today.
But it's on your party's website and
fair enough. But
so
I'm telling
that's
you,
where I'm getting confused.
Yeah. But I'm telling you where I am. Right.
Okay,
and so the party website can say that. I'm telling you what I'm saying is that right now there's massive ambiguity here and confusion. So for me is that the courts are interpreting this one way, whether it was intended to mean that or not. And that's a huge problem. And that needs to be fixed. So that's where I'm at. That's where my caucus is at, and that's where the party's at.
What sort of damage will a flat out repealing of DRIPA do with the relationships that we have with First Nations folks? Obviously, these relationships are important for major projects. So shouldn't we consider this risk as well of, the damage to those relationships?
Great question. But what is the damage being done without us doing anything right now? And I think the damage that's being done right now is equally as great, because, people are hearing about this. They're scared. And whether it's the Cowichan case, which you explained is separate, whether it's what you and I have been talking about now with DRIPA, but people are scared when they feel like their property is at risk. That is, one of the number one things that people.
But that's separate from DRIPA. I mean, DRIPA is kind of
100%.
establishing a duty to consult, which seems like it's something that can be worked. I mean, that's literally what you just described is working with First Nations folks. So I'm just confused if repealing it right away, risks these relationships.
Well, I don't think it does, because I think it actually allows you to maybe work on something that could be better and more meaningful. And I'm not sure what that is, but I can tell you right now is that this isn't working, right? When your top legal officials in the province are saying, hey, we've got a big problem here. When the courts are interpreting this one way, whether this is what the premier or the attorney general at the time meant for that or not, I don't know. It's a question for him. But I would say we're in a very uncomfortable situation here, First Nations included, when I say that. So I don't think that the status quo is working right now. And I think that the majority of British Columbians would agree with me on that. So there needs to be change. And if the premier has a silver bullet here in terms of an amendment, I think he probably would have highlighted it by now, because the business community, everybody is in a panic here, and we're not seeing any leadership on this from him. So I think if he had an idea on how to solve it, we would have heard it by now.
Yeah, fair enough. Trevor, you ended the year with an op-ed in the Vancouver Sun talking about the need to balance reconciliation efforts with the interests of the business community that leads to economic growth, that funds all the public services that we like. Aside from repealing DRIPA, which obviously that is the position of your party, what else needs to be done in this reconciliation space?
Well, I think there's a lot that we can do. And I look at it almost from a view of like kind of economic reconciliation. And I've worked on a number of projects where you've had that partnership with First Nations, and it's something that's got to develop very early. Like you can't go in when you're kind of at the final stage of an environmental assessment and say, hey, I would really like your support on this. Those conversations are best when they're done in good faith, but they're done really early on. And I think, I think people that were coming in from out of province that realizes that's it's not that hard to do, right? And, especially I believe in a thriving private sector. And I don't think that's going to surprise a lot of people out there, because there's a lot of good things you can do when the private sector is thriving. I believe that for economic reconciliation as well. I have seen how it's transformed communities and how different bands and different nations have prospered because of economic projects that have been in their area. And one of the key people that I've learned this the most from was Ellis Ross. I actually sat next to Ellis in the house for a couple of years, and he was the guy. Like if you were to point to one person in this province, it's not that got LNG done. It's actually not a politician, even though he's a politician now. It was Ellis Ross.
Yeah.
And it was Ellis's leadership with the Haida and everything he did for his community, whether Indigenous or not. But Ellis had a vision and he believed in it. And he brought forward something with his people, with everybody that really united everyone in something. And there was mass opposition to that. But he never wavered. He never blinked. His messaging never changed. he was steadfast. And so I think if people are looking for, how that blueprint is done, it's there and it's evident. And, whenever I talk about LNG Canada, it's hard not to talk about Ellis Ross.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the Conservative Party of BC is still very much committed to that duty and obligation to consult, to create partnerships with First Nations.
Absolutely.
But not in the way that DRIPA has basically had consequences in terms of our judicial system or laws.
That doesn't mean a veto. Right. Yeah. And I don't think that anybody should have a veto. And when you're looking
but it's unclear that UNDRIP has provided or DRIPA has provided a veto.
But because it's unclear, that means that the courts could clear that up very quickly.
Right.
Which is a problem.
You want to bring power back to the legislature.
Yeah. And so and take that out of the courtroom. But if you want to get to a good place in terms of Indigenous involvement, whether it's an economic project or something else, is that it's dealing in partnership and good faith and having that dialogue very early on and building that trust. And that can happen. And you're not going to agree on everything. Right. But you need to build that foundation first. And I think that every government should be striving towards doing that, but you got to be authentic about it. And I think part of the challenge here is that the NDP are now caught in the middle here and they don't know what to do. And now nothing gets done. And that's not good for anybody. Right. Especially British Columbians. So that's a huge problem that we need to rectify.
Well, I know you missed my commentary off the top of the show, but my commentary was about nothing being done or things being delayed. So I think we're on the same page there.
I'm sure we are.
Trevor, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mo.
Folks, that's our show. Thank you so much to the interim leader of the Conservative Party of BC, Trevor Halford. Trevor's actually going to stick around to record a little overtime to discuss the future of his party as they seek a new leader.
And people don't want to hand out. They want to know that they have a chance. They want to know that there's a level playing field. And I think that's exactly what we're going to stand for and show. So, I'm hopeful. I think the last couple of months have been rough. But at the end of the day, I think they've been rough for our party. But think about how rough the last number of years have been for British Columbians, right? And that's what drives us.
I think we could be in a 2001 situation where we have such a big, momentous group and energy and movement that we could wipe them out.
Fine. This is VANCOLOUR, wherever you listen to your podcasts for that. Now, I may have turned heel this week with my commentary to open the show. If you have any thoughts on that or DRIPA, please shoot me an email, mo@thisisvancolour.com. Also, find me on social media @VANCOLOUR. And hey, Happy New Year to our friends at the Pacific Sands Beach Resort in Tofino. If you're feeling the January slump, which we're going to discuss next week with Mandy Gill, a stay at the Pacific Sands might be just what you need. They're supporting local conversations here on This is VANCOLOUR. Until next time, stay colorful. Peace.